When ships of the Union Navy took up blockade positions in southern coastal waters, they served as a symbol of liberty for slaves on land. When word spread that Navy ships were just offshore, groups of slaves fled plantations, commandeered small boats, and made their way to the ships. It presented Union commanders with something of a dilemma. The Fugitive Slave Act required the return of escaped slaves to their masters. Failure to do so could be a violation of federal law. But Union commanders, most of whom were sympathetic to the slaves' plight, quickly found a loophole. The Confederacy was waging war on the Union and was using slave labor to build fortifications and aid the war effort in other ways. Since slaves were considered property, the Union commanders declared them contraband, and thus they would not be returned. But where would they go? Some families were settled on coastal islands under the protection of the U.S. Navy. Others were transported to Union Navy yards where they could find employment. Still others, who wanted more than anything to fight against the Confederacy, got their chance. Navy Secretary Gideon Welles had a severe manpower shortage and needed all available hands. A number of free blacks already served in the ranks, so Welles gave his commanders leeway to employ escaped slaves who wanted to serve.
It is not the policy of this government to invite or encourage this kind of desertion, and yet, under the circumstances, no other course could be adopted without violating every principle of humanity. To return them would be impolitic as well as cruel. You will do well to employ them. Gideon Welles, Secretary of the Navy, July 22, 1861.
Welles authorized Navy commanders to enlist contrabands and pay them $10 a month, compensation equivalent to Army privates. Welles justified the enlistment by pointing out having slaves remain as refugees strained the ship's resources, and requiring them to work without compensation was nothing more than an extension of the slavery from which they had fled. Though history doesn't record it, Welles may have also received encouragement from the Commander-in-Chief, who often listened to Frederick Douglass, a strong advocate for African Americans in uniform. Notably, Welles authorized his officers to enlist former slaves under the same forms and regulations as apply to other enlistments. Though there were some restrictions placed on their advancement, African American sailors served in racially integrated crews. Photographs from the era show black and white sailors mixing easily on deck, sharing an interracial camaraderie that was almost entirely lacking on land. Army units were strictly segregated, but there were no segregated Navy crews. Besides escaped slaves, a number of free blacks served in the Union Navy. Many were former merchant sailors and provided valuable skills. At one time, an estimated 16% of sailors in the Union Navy were African American. In combat, African American sailors served with great distinction. 7 men: Landsman Aaron Anderson, USS Wyandank; Contraband Robert Blake, USS Marblehead; Landsman William Brown, USS Brooklyn; Landsman Wilson Brown, USS Hartford; Landsman John Lawson, USS Hartford; Engineers Cook James Mifflin, USS Brooklyn; and Seaman Joaquin Peace, USS Kearsarge, were awarded the Medal of Honor for valor under fire. Robert Smalls, perhaps, deserves special note. In 1862, he commandeered a Confederate supply ship in Charleston Harbor and escaped slavery along with his family and a small crew of fellow slaves. A skilled pilot and seaman, Smalls provided valuable information about the waters off South Carolina and Confederate defenses. In addition to heroic deeds carried out on and below decks, thousands of other African American men and women aided the United States Navy in a variety of ways, as informants, spies, pilots, mechanics, nurses, and laundresses. The African American sailor was part of an integrated force of seamen committed to the fight to preserve the Union, and in the case of African Americans, a literal fight for freedom. Their lives aboard ship were much like those of their white counterparts, with whom they had many things in common. They were young, courageous, and on a mission.